All right, Bosai, good morning, good morning. Let us begin a good tavach, a schus Baruch Hashem, to be able to begin another week of learning together. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share, to thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Sivan, Stephen Terry Zinn, for dedicating all the Sherman Roshos this month with gratitude to Hashem as they welcome their fifth grandchild, Gabriel Amichai Zinn, born to Shane and Eric Zinn in Rochester, New York, and in loving memory of Steve's mother, Doris Zinn, Devora Bas Rabbi Yisrael Yoel Zichron Livracha. To thank Shane Dean Avram Kelman for dedicating all the Sherman Joshos this month, creation of the architect of Avram's father, Rifal Yechiel Ben Avram, Mr. Jerome Kelman Zichron Livracha, and our week of learning sponsor, Hillary Jacobson Kent, in memory of her daughter, Shifra Zichron Livracha Bas Chanadina. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshamas Lav and Aliyah, the families in Nechama. And again, I'll say, of course, we enter into this week with overwhelming Besoros Tovos of the rescue of 4 of our hostages, the return of them to their family. Anyone who's watched any of the incredible videos and incredible reunions, obviously so many of them laced with so much joy, yet so much pain and so much overwhelming heartbreak. But again, it gives us a tremendous, not just a ray of light, but a burst of light in what has been an incredibly overwhelmingly difficult time for Am Yisrael. And we hope that just as the Ribono Shel Olam enabled our precious soldiers to bring back 4 of our hostages, Kadosh Baruch Hu should give them the koach, the gvura, the chachma, the bina, and the das to be able to bring every last one home as well. We'll say with that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem, a really great daf ahead of us. Today's daf is Kuf Beis 102, and we are picking up at the Mishnah on 101b. Kuf Aleph Beis, the Mishnah towards the bottom of the daf. Very interesting case. We'll say, Hamaskir Bais Lechavero. So we'll say a person rents a house to his friend. So I have a home, and I rent the home to Ruvain. So what's the halacha? Hamaskir Chayiv Bedelas Benagar Ubeminol Ubechol Davar Shemai Su'uman. So we'll say, this is interesting. So now the Mishnah is discussing what are the obligations of the landlord versus of the renter. So the Mishnah says, as the landlord, I am obligated for the door, for the bolt. So we'll say the nagar is the bolt. That's the bolt with which you close the door from the inside. Ubeminal, that's also called the lock, right? That's what you close the door with from the outside. Ubechol davar shemai su'uman. And for that matter, again, anything that is a ma'isuman. We'll say ma'isuman means something that's like needs a craftsman, something that only a person with specific training would be able to do. But stam, a person might not be equipped, might not have the skill set to be able to do it. So in general, again, it's halacha. The Mishnah is espousing a principle. If I'm a landlord and I'm renting out my house, I am obligated to take care of anything that's called a ma'ase uman, something that requires a more honed skill set. Other stuff that anyone could do, the renter is obligated to aval davar she'eino ma'ase uman, but saying it's not a ma'ase uman, something that's not a specialty item, doesn't require craftsmen, hasocher osehu, then the renter is obligated to do it. Okay, so very interesting halacha. Hazevel shabal abayis. Any manure belongs to the landlord. Obviously, we're going to have to qualify that a little bit. What is that referring to? And the renter only gets the stuff that comes out of the tanur or kirayim. Tanur or kirayim, different types of Talmudic ovens. So I said the idea over here is you could use, actually interesting, they would often use ash as fertilizer. So the idea that on one hand the Mishnah says that any manure that comes from an animal, that belongs to the landlord, to me, to the owner of the property. But yet stuff, ash or soot that comes from the oven, that belongs to the renter. Okay, we'll qualify all of this in the Gemara. So we'll say if I rent a home to Ruvain, maskir chayev lahamilo delaso. So we'll say here this brisa is a bit more item specific. So the maskir, the landlord, Chayiv lamilod delasos. I have an obligation to make sure that the doors are in. So what that means is create the space for doors, also install doors. Liftach lo chalonos, to make sure that there are windows that are there. Lechazik lo tikra, to make sure that the roof is a good roof inspection, right? Lismoch lo kora, to make sure that the beams are in good order. So we'll say all of that. Essentially, we'll say, what it is? What it almost sounds like? Structural, right? Anything structural is going to be on the owner, on the landlord. Basocher, but the renter himself, chayiv lasas lo sulam, chayiv lasas lo sulam. So the renter is obligated to create the ladder. Ladder, must remember again, they used to have attics, but they didn't have a staircase to the attic. Instead, you had a ladder to the attic. So who's obligated to make the ladder? That is the renter. Renter, lasas lo makeh. Well, remember again, there's a halacha that you're supposed to put a fence around your roof. So ultimately, again, that obligation devolves upon the renter, not upon the landlord. This is interesting. Marzeh will say is a gutter. It's a gutter. It's fascinating. So gutters apparently weren't considered to be structural. As such, again, it's on the renter to put up the gutters. Ulatiach es gago, and to plaster the roof. In other words, so apparently the lender, so not the lender, the owner, the landlord, had the obligation to make sure that the roof was structurally sound. But like the ceiling of the roof, that was on the renter. And both sides, I just want to point out that Rambam highlights with these halachas that obviously all of this is also based on minhag hamakom. Right? In other words, what the Mishnah is reflecting over here is what was their commonly held arrangement, right? The common arrangement in times of the Mishnah. But of course, all of this is dictated societally. So halacha l'maaseh again. So whatever, I would imagine that today, in terms of like rental agreements, many of these things are very different. In other words, a lot of the things that the Gemara is highlighting over here that be the responsibility of the renter, I think the pashtos today are responsibility of the landlord, right? The renter doesn't have the obligation for gutters, right? The renter doesn't have the obligation to make sure that the roof is sealed, right? These are all things that are upon the landlord. But again, Gemara is giving you this distinction, but also again recognizing that it's based on minhag hamakom. To which the Gemara asks an interesting question. The Gemara says, mezuzah al mi. Listen to this. Who has the obligation to put up the mezuzah? The Gemara says, mezuzah al mi. The Gemara says, what kind of question is that? Mezuzah, mezuzah chovas hadarhi. Well, say that's obvious. The mezuzah is an obligation upon the person who's living in the space. So what's the pshat? Of course, the mezuzah is on the renter. What, the landlord has an obligation to put up the mezuzahs? I will say this is the phrase. Mezuzahs chovas hadar. Mezuzah, the obligation of mezuzah devolves upon the person who is living in the space. Ela makom mezuzah al mi. Rather, I will say this is actually very beautiful. The shayla is, I will say, second line from the bottom on 101b kufala from the base. Ela makom mezuzah al mi. I will say, who is obligated to provide for the space of the mezuzah? Now, what does that mean? Take a look at Rashi. Last Rashi on the daf. Makom mezuzah ha'itz shadelas shokef ala va'afu kari mezuzah vim evenhu tzarech linkov bo sedak lanicha besocha. I will say this is actually quite beautiful. Imagine the following idea. You have a stone doorway. So I'll say, so now in a stone doorway, what they would do is they would chisel into the stone in order to be able to put the cloth, the piece of mezuzah, into. You see this in the old city of Yerushalayim Mirakodesh, right? You see this, that again, if you walk through the old city on your way down to the coast, you can see that a lot of the doorways have chiseled in areas in which you could put in the mezuzah. So you don't need a case. In other words, you take the cloth and you put the cloth actually inside of the doorway. So Gemara asks, whose obligation is it to go ahead and chisel out the stone? And by the way, it doesn't have to be in stone. You could do this anywhere. In other words, you could hollow out. You could hollow out in a wooden doorway also. So the shaila is, who is obligated to create the space for the mezuzah? To which the Gemara says, Ella makom mezuzah al mi. Amru Rav Sheshes tinisua davar shein ma'aseh uman asochr v'hai nami lav ma'aseh umanhu. So Rav Sheshes answered. Rav Sheshes said, that's an obvious question. That's an obvious answer. The Mishnah already gave me the principle. I will say again, what's the distinction between landlord versus renter obligations? Anything that's a ma'aseh uman, in other words, anything that's like a specialty item, anything that requires a specialized skill set, that's on the landlord. That's on the landlord. Anything that essentially anyone could do, that's on the renter. That's on the renter. And therefore, again, the Gemara says, now here's what's interesting. The truth is, putting up the mezuzah doesn't require an uman, doesn't require a specialty skill set. But one second, chiseling into stone, is not pashut. It's not pashut. In other words, you do need a little bit of a specialized skill set to know how to do it. Right? You don't want to crack the whole stone. To which the Gemara, listen to this. Ha'efshar hu, top of Kufpei's 102b. Ha'efshar begufsa dekanya. Both say it's very simple. You don't need to chisel into the stone to go ahead and put up the mezuzah. Rather, what could you do? You could put the cloth in a reed covering and hang the reed. In other words, both say what the Gemara is answering essentially is, to put up the mezuzah, you do not need to chisel into the stone. What what could you do? Put your cloth into a case and put the case on the doorpost, like what we do. So that doesn't require a ma'isuman. That doesn't require any type of specialty skill set. Okay, you want to go, you would prefer to chisel into the stone, and chiseling into the stone is going to need some masonry work. So that's a decision that as the renter I could make. But Lamaisa, there is a way to put up the mezuzah without any type of craftsman or specialty skill set. Therefore, that obligation devolves up the makom mezuzah, creating the placement for the mezuzah, ultimately devolves upon the renter. Incredible. Let's go back there. Hamaskir bais lechavero ala socher la sos lo mezuzah. So we'll say here it is. Bryce says explicitly, when you rent a home from someone, the obligation for the mezuzah is on the renter. It's on the renter. That goes back to Rav Mesharshia's statement before, that mezuzah is chovas hadar. The obligation of mezuzah goes upon the person who is living in the space, the renter. Okay, now this is an incredible halacha. So we'll say, now watch this. So now I have a home and I rent it to Ruvain. So Ruvain moves in, he puts in his mezuzah, puts up his mezuzahs, because the obligation of mezuzah is upon the renter. Now Ruvain moves out. So what's the halacha? Ukishu yotze lo yitlenu biyado. Now we'll say, when Ruvain moves out, he's not allowed to take his mezuzahs with him. Can't take his mezuzahs with him. So the Gemara says, lo yitlenu biyado v'yetze. However, uminachri not lebiyado miyotze. However, if Ruvain knows that a non-Jew is moving in afterwards, ultimately, again, he's permitted to go ahead and take the mezuzahs with him. Now both say, now what's the logic over here? This is a well-known halacha, that if a Jew is living in a space and then he's moving out, he can't take his mezuzahs with him. Right? Why? Because remember, mezuzah affords security to the domicile. To actively remove that when another Jew is coming in is halachically problematic. It's halachically problematic. So if I know that a non-Jew is coming in, I can take my mezuzahs. Now both say, now I just want to point out, this halacha is sometimes misunderstood. That yes, you are obligated to leave your mezuzahs for the Jew, right? But you are not obligated to leave them for free. In other words, so if I'm living in a rented space, I'm moving out, so I have an obligation, and I know, let's say another Jew is moving in, so I have an obligation to leave my mezuzahs. But I say to the Jew who's moving in, I'm leaving my mezuzahs. Here's how much it costs. In other words, again, however we bepashtos, what you could charge is replacement value, right? Because now I'm going to have to buy a whole new set of mezuzahs. I'm happy to leave you these mezuzahs. They're wonderful, they're beautiful, they're mehudir, they're checked, but I don't have to leave it for free. So halacha l'maisa, again, now you have to pay me for it, or if you don't want my mezuzahs, I could take them with me. That's what it means. It's almost like you have to leave. It's like a right of first refusal. You have to leave it there. If I know that a non-Jew is moving in, or for that matter, if I don't know who's moving in, I'm allowed to take them with me. So the Gemara says, listen to this. The Gemara says, good. There was a story of a guy, a Jew, who was moving out of a space, and he took his mezuzahs with him. The cover ishto ushnei banav. And unfortunately, as a result of taking the mezuzahs, he lost his family. Now I would say, so just first of all, what a tragic story. The idea over here is, by removing the mezuzahs, he removed divine protection from someone moving into that space, and as a result, it appears that divine protection was removed from him as well. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. My solistar? I will say, generally, the structure of this brisa was like this. Case 1, I'm moving out and there's a Jew moving in, don't take your mezuzahs. Case 2, there's a non-Jew moving in, of course, I could take my mezuzahs with me. Then the Gemara tells a story. So we assume that the story is going on the case of the non-Jew, but then the story contradicts the ruling by the non-Jew, to which the Gemara says, Rav Sheshes, no, Aresha. It's going on the Resha. It's going on the Resha. Now we'll say, now I'll just also point out something interesting. Sometimes when Chazal want to highlight tremendous culpability that a person has, they use the lashon of kover ishto ubanav. A person does X, a person who does this kind of thing will bury his wife and his children. So we'll say, and sometimes that's the Chazal's descriptive language of saying you've done something really terrible. Because when we think about chas v'shalom, the most horrific losses to endure, the losses of family. Losses of family, obviously, are the most overwhelming. So again, I'm just mentioning it because it'd be interesting to know. Again, here it says Metzia be'echad, so it sounds like the story happened. It sounds like the story actually happened. But again, it's also interesting to highlight that for Chazal, when they try to highlight that this is really something serious and significant, they'll often highlight that with the loss of immediate family. I will say, but the idea over here of mezuzah is actually very profound. The idea of how, as Jews, it is important not only to look out for our own safety and security, but to look out for the safety and security of our brothers and sisters as well. So that I have a mezuzah up in my home. So Baruch Hashem, that's providing me with safety and security. Now I'm leaving the home. Again, I can't just take that safety and security with me, depriving the person who's moving in of it. I have an obligation to look out for the other as well. Incredible. All right, let's go back there. Simor says, Hazevel Shabal Abayis, Ve'enu Soch Ali Yotzim Natar Mikirayim. So then the Mishnah said that manure in the field belongs to the landlord, and the renter only has the ash that is coming out of the oven. So the Gemara says, "My askina." Now, again, we will say when you make this blanket statement that like the manure belongs to the landlord, what's the case? My askina. So we'll say if we're talking about again that the chutzner, the courtyard, was leased to the renter, and the oxen in question, right, belong to the renter, then amai shal bal habayis. Then I don't understand why does the landlord get anything. Ela b'chutzner de lo agir l'socher. Rather, we have to be talking like this. I'm renting Ruben a home. I'm renting him a house. I did not rent him the courtyard by the house. Right, so the yard by the house, I'm still retaining ownership over it. Vituri demaskir, so it's my courtyard and it's my oxen. If that's the case, the Gemara says, Pshita, then obviously the menorah is mine, right? If the courtyard is mine and the animals are mine, so of course the menorah is mine. So both say this is very interesting. Come about. Suppose the case over here is the chatzar is mine, right? I rented Ruvain my house or a house, but I did not rent him the courtyard. So the courtyard is mine. I'm talking about animals that just wandered onto the field by themselves. So now the Mishnah said that the menorah belongs to me. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi. So therefore the Mishnah says, so now watch this. So that the courtyard is mine. The animals are not mine. The animals are just animals that wandered in. They defecate on my field. So now we're saying the menorah belongs to me. It belongs to me. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina. This seems to support the position of Rabbi Chanina. What does Rabbi Chanina say? The Amr Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina, Chatzera shel Adam Kona lo Shalomi Daito. So we'll say this is actually interesting halacha. That a person's chatzar acquires for him shalomi daito, even without his knowledge or consent. There's a concept called kinyan chatzar. Kinyan chatzar means my property is able to acquire for me. So something comes into my chatzar, I don't know about it, right? I'm not aware of it. My chatzar acquires it on my behalf. That's what we also say. So therefore, the Gemara seems to say that this is the concept that is really being utilized over here. So what happens? I have a house and a chutzner. I rent my house to Ruvain. Good. The chutzner I retain for me. Now animals wander onto my chutzner, do their business in my chutzner. The fertilizer, the manure is mine. But I didn't know about it. So Gemara says, no problem. A person's chatzar acquires even without his knowledge. We'll say, by the way, there's a tremendous Moser Haskel in that statement of chatzero shal adam kono lo shalomi daito. We'll say, what does that say? Anything that comes into your property, right? Anything that comes into your domicile is acquired by you, even if you don't know about it. And I was saying, the influences we allow into our home, either intentionally or unintentionally, are acquired by the home and acquired by the family, whether you're cognizant of what you're letting in or not. Whatever wanders into my chutzner acquires. Whatever comes into my home and my family acquires. It's an incredibly overwhelming yesod, because sometimes you try to be vigilant, but again, I will say you have to be even more vigilant than vigilant, because whatever makes its way, this is everything, whether it's people, whether it's forms of entertainment, whatever it might be, whatever makes its way into my chutzner is acquiring it. My home is acquiring it. My family is acquiring it. Afilu shalomi daito. Even though I might not even be cognizant about what exactly is occurring over here. Incredible. So the Gemara says, Metzia, so we'll say, so now again, so just let's bring this back to the Mishnah. So what did the Mishnah say? So now we have the case. I'm renting my home to Ruvain. The home has an attached chutzner, right? The chutzner I'm not renting off, so the chutzner I'm retaining ownership over. Animal from the veld, a veld animal, right? An animal that doesn't, or whatever, a hefker animal, it doesn't matter whose animal it is, right? And well, actually, an animal wanders in. That's not my animal, not Ruvain's animal. It does this business on my yard. I will say it's interesting, by the way, right? How difference in like an agricultural society versus an non-agricultural society, right? So like today, someone's animal comes and relieves itself on your yard. You have some choice words for the owner of that animal, right? I would say it's incredible, right? How like Bismana Gemara, you're like, thank you, shkoyach, right? It's fantastic, right? Because now again, that's actually something beneficial. It's fascinating. Again, I will say how the same direct, right? What is it? Right? The same stuff, right? The same stuff could be a nuisance or could be a treasure. Everything depends on disposition and ultimately orientation. A good mussar in life, right? What is it? One man's garbage is another man's treasure, right? So again, I'll say one man's nuisance is another man's windfall. Incredible. So more goes weiter. So meisvei im amar kol metzia she'avol l'sochayom tikneli chatzei. You're supposed to listen to this. Let's say I make unrelated case. Well, somewhat related to Rabbi Yosef Lili. Listen to this. I make a statement. Anything that comes into my chutzner, my chutzner should acquire. And we'll say, you know what? I say kol metzia. So in other words, any lost object that should make its way into my chutzner today, my chutzner should acquire. So we'll say, what's the halacha? Lo amar klum. Such a statement is meaningless. The Gemara says, okay. V'im isa lahad Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina. I don't understand. Based on what we just said, Rabbi Yosef Chanina said that which means my chutzner could acquire even without my knowledge or consent. Right? So if that's the case, then why doesn't the statement why doesn't the statement work when I say any objects that come into my chutzner today, my chutzner should acquire it? Because also the truth is, even if you don't make that statement, ultimately again it should work. So why doesn't it work? It's very important. Once we're talking about a chutzner that is not guarded, not secured. So the Bava said this is very important. Even Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina will say, when do we say chatzero shel adam kona lo shelo midaito? When do we say that your chatzar has the ability to acquire for you on your behalf, even without your knowledge? When is that? When it's a secure chatzar. A secure chutzner. It has a fence, it has a tree line, whatever it is, it's enclosed. That's when my chutzner has the ability, which makes sense to us, right? If you just have a wide open area, the notion that your chutzner could acquire on your behalf without your knowledge doesn't make any sense. But if it's a secure area, this is my chutzner, this is my property, then it makes sense that my chutzner has acquisitory powers even without my knowledge. To which the Gemara says, if that's because look at the Brisa, Yatza lo shem Metzia be'ir tvarav kayamin. I'll say the end of that Brisa said, but if, so literally translated, Yatza lo shem Metzia be'ir. So I'll say, let's say again, right? Word went out that a deer. Rashi's explanation of this is that word's going around town that a deer with a broken leg is laying down in Silber's field. Right? So we'll say, so now again, a deer with a broken leg isn't really going anywhere. So now the Gemara says, the Brisa says that if that news is circulated, then my chutzner does acquire it on my behalf. But the Gemara says, 1 second. If, as you just said before, v'i b'chutzner she'eino mishtameres, ki yata l'shem metzia be'ir mai havi. So the Gemara says, I understand, but you just set this up as a case of where my chutzner is not secure. If I have an unsecured chutzner, then who cares if people are talking about the crippled deer that's laying down in my chutzner? Why should my chutzner acquire that? To which the Gemara says something very interesting. Kevan diyesh lo shem metzia be'ir mivdal bedili inish minei v'havi leike chutzner mishtameres. So I'll say interesting. The Gemara says, since halacha l'maisa, everyone's talking about it, and they know that the deer with the broken leg isn't going anywhere, and it's staying in my field, and people know it's in my field. Everyone's going to stay away from taking it, and therefore it's as if my chutzner is secure. Okay, fine. So as well say, so just leave. What do we have so far? Here's what we have. Remember, we're trying to figure out the case of where halacha l'maisa The Mishnah said, I rented my house to Ruvain, retained ownership over my field, over my chatzar. Now there's manure, there's fertilizer in the field. The fertilizer is mine. What's the case? Again, the chatzar is mine. Animal came from somewhere else. Chasero shal adam kona lo shalomidas. My chatzar has the ability to acquire something on my behalf even without my knowledge. Now we've just qualified that ruling. When is that so? When is that true? Bechatzar mishtameres, a secure field. A secure field. Okay, so that's what we got. So Gemara says, Metzia is a kasha. Zeval hayotzi min atana min hakarayim va'kolit min ha'avir harehu shalo. So let's listen to this. So Bryce that comments on our Mishnah. Bryce says like this. Therefore, in this case, where again I've rented the house to Ruvain, right? So Ruvain has his house. Ruvain has his house, right? Ruvain is renting my house. The field or the chutzner I'm keeping for me. I'm keeping for me. So now the Bryce says, therefore, Ruvain could take whatever ash or whatever stuff from the oven and use that as fertilizer. Rabbi said, now what's the chiddush in that? Remember, who owns the oven inside the house? Who owns that? Me, right? Me. It's my house with my appliances. So the chiddush of the Mishnah is, since Reuven rented the home, even though I'm the owner of the home and the owner of the appliances, he gets the soot or whatever you call it. That's probably a better word than soot. Ash, right? He gets the ash from the oven, and he could use that for fertilizer purposes, right? That works. In fact, so furthermore, listen to this. Avir harehu shalo. Furthermore, if he collects manure from the air. Now, both say, now what does it mean he collects manure from the air? So, Apashas, what that means is he's catching it as the animal is defecating. It's a slow day, whatever. So it's like Baltimore on a Sunday. Like there's nothing. I would say, so he's catching it midair. So ultimately, again, he goes ahead and that works. Very shalom. Right? But any manure found in the refes, we'll say is the barn or chatzar in the courtyard, that belongs to the balabais. Now, both say the Gemara is intrigued by the midair case. Vim isa lahad Rabbi Yosef Chanina, tamer chatzar shal adam koron l'shalom midaito, koleit. So the Gemara says koleit me'aviro, amai harehu shalo, avir chatzerohu. Supposed to listen to this. I don't understand. If we accept the premise of Rabbi Yosef Chanina, that's what? That your chatzar has the ability to acquire something on your behalf, even without your knowledge. Now both say chatzar also has avir. Avir means airspace. In other words, a chatzar acquires something, not just when something lands on the ground to the chatzar, but even in the airspace of the chatzar. As such, Rabbi said, so the image over here is, right, so just play this out. So again, Reuven's renting my house, but I retain ownership over my chatzar. So in the Brace's case, Reuven's in my chatzar, following around the cow defecates, he catches the excrement in a kli, in a utensil. And the Brace says that works, that's okay. Well, why is that okay? And in essence, I will say, my chatzar should acquire the excrement even before it hits the ground. Why? Because chatzar also acquires through airspace. So as soon as that excrement comes into the airspace of my chatzar, I should acquire it, not Ruvain. We're talking about a case where literally again, Ruvain attached the utensil mamish to the body of the cow. Meaning what? So that the excrement is never actually entering into the airspace. It's going right from the animal into the utensil. Okay, Rava Amar, Avir Shein Sofa Lanuach Lav Kimunach Dami. So Rava gives a different example. Rava says, airspace only acquires when the item ultimately is destined to come to rest in the chatzar. But in a case where the item is never going to come to rest in the chatzar, like Reuven positions a kli underneath the cow, so that again the excrement is never going to hit the ground of the chatzar. It's only going to hit the kli. Therefore, airspace does not apply, or airspace does not acquire. The Gemara says, "Umi pshita le'Rava." Is that true that Rava says that's so pashid? Vami ba'i baile. Rava asks this question. Rava says, in this case, "Debai Rava zarak arniki bepesach zeh v'yatza bepesach zeh mahu." Rava say, "Watch this. Let's say again, I have a bag of money. That I don't need." Halavai, right? Halavai by all of us, right? I have a bag of money that I don't need, so I'm making it hefker. And I say, listen, whoever gets this bag of money first, it's theirs. So what do? I chuck it, I throw it. And now here, watch this case. I throw it, and I happen to have an excellent arm, right, and precision aim. So I throw it, and I'm standing right by Reuven's house. Not to brag, whatever. And I throw it to Reuven's house. So watch this. It goes through one window of Reuven's house, and exits through another window of Reuven's house, and lands in Shimon's yard. So what's the shaila? Who acquired the money? See, on one hand, it shot through Reuven's house. So it went through Reuven's chatzar, because his house is his chatzar. It went in the airspace, but it landed in Shimon's property. So who owns the money? Who owns the money? So the Gemara says, Rava asked the Shaila, right? I throw the money in one window, it goes out another window. Mahu. Avir she'ein sofa lunuach kimunach dami, olav kimunach dami. So I will say when an object goes through airspace and it's not going to come to rest in that airspace, is it like it's come to rest or not? So you see from here that Rava has this kasha. When an object is going through airspace and it is not going to come to rest in that chutzner, in that airspace or in that area, is it considered to be as if it's at rest or not? Tushimar says it's not a good comparison to the cow case. Why? Hasam lo mifsak v'lo midi, hacha mifsak midi. So you both say in the bag of money case, there is nothing technically interrupting between the money and the chutzner. In other words, if the money wants to just fall down, so to speak, into the chutzner, it can fall down. In the case of the manure, remember, Reuven positioned the kli underneath the cow. So therefore, again, that excrement is never coming to rest in the chutzner itself. It's only going to go into the kli. Okay, fine. So the Gemara says, so therefore, halacha l'maisa, that's the interpretation of the Bryce's case. The interpretation of the Bryce's case, when it says that if Reuven gets the excrement from the avir, from the airspace, must be a case of where he's putting a kli underneath the animal. Therefore, the excrement is never going to come to rest in the chutzner. So because it's never going to come to rest in the chutzner, therefore the airspace of the chutzner doesn't acquire it either. And therefore, Reuven is the proud owner of some new manure. Okay, but the Bryce has said, manure that you get from the barn or from the chutzner, that belongs to the balabais. So the Gemara says, Tarti, why don't in both of these cases? So the Gemara says, Amrabai hachi kamar v'shebarefes v'shebachatzer hare elusha balabais. And then I both say it's actually not two cases, it's actually one case. From the barn that is in the chutzner, that belongs to me, the owner of the property, and not to Reuven. Okay, Ravashi says, what do you see from here? Zoso Meres, this teaches us, Hamaskir chatzero stam lo hiskir refes sheba. Both say this teaches us a very important halachic principle, which is, when you lend someone or when you rent someone a chutzner, rental of a field doesn't automatically include the rental of a barn. This is interesting. Right? So in other words, just a general case, I have a chutzner, I'm renting Reuven a chutzner, right? And I'm renting a courtyard. In the courtyard is a barn. So halacha l'maisa again, just because you rent someone a chutzner, the barn is not automatically included. You would have to stipulate that the barn itself is included in the rental of the chutzner. All right, fascinating. So Metzia, the Gemara is the kasha, is that true? Yonei shovach v'yonei aliyah. So we'll say these are interesting cases. So yonei shovach, yonei aliyah are literally again doves that live in a dovecote. Or Yoni Aliyah. Aliyah literally means they live in an upper story. Now the interesting thing about these doves is that even though they live in a quote-unquote domesticated area, they're not domestic doves in that they go out into the wild to go out and secure their food. Rashi says over here, Yonei shovach shemevakshim zonosem b'sada v'kineim b'shovach ve'ein elu yonei hadresios hagdelim bebatim. So I will say there were these what they call like these Herodian doves. So Herodian doves were domestic doves. You raised them at home, you fed them at home. Totally domestic. These Yonei Shovach, Yonei Aliyah, they lived like in domestic areas, but they got their sustenance out in the wild on their own. So I will say, so as such, these are not privately owned doves. It's very important halacha. So watch this. The Gemara says, very interesting case here. Hayoni Shav Yonei Aliyah, Chayavos b'shiluach. So we'll say, now watch this. This is actually very interesting. So now, what's fascinating about this is these doves, I made this dove coat, right? It's my dove coat. Or they live in my attic, right? In my aliyah. So we'll say, so even though technically speaking they're living on my property, they're not mine. They're not mine. Why are they not mine? Because first of all, again, they come and go as they please, right? They come and go as they please, and they get their food on the outside. So therefore, because that's what I was saying, there is an obligation of shiluach hakan. if I want to go ahead and take the eggs, I have to send away the mother bird first. Now, we're going to see in the midst of Shiluach Hakan is non-domestic animals. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a pet bird. You have a pet bird, right? And your pet bird goes ahead and lays eggs. There is no obligation you have to send away the mother before taking the eggs, right? You could just take the eggs right with the mother sitting there. Because the mitzvah of Shiluach Hakan is only in non-domestic words. We're going to see that because the lashon of the pasuk is ki kare kan sipor lefanecha baderech, right? When you happen upon a bird's nest on the way, it's only animals that don't belong to you. So interestingly enough, even though these doves live in my dovecote or live in my attic, ultimately, again, they do not belong to me. A lot like kids, right? In other words, right? They might, except they do eat your food, right? So the Metzia, even the Saloch Lamaisa, they don't belong to me. Therefore, there's a mitzvah of shiluach. Va'asuras begezlim de'darchei shalom. Now, this is interesting, but you can't. So let's say I have these doves. Ruvain can't come to my dovecote and take those doves, even though technically speaking, they're not mine. But because they're living in my property, so therefore again, mipnei darkei shalom. Let's say in order to maintain peace between neighbors, right, peace in the community, you should not take them from someone else. V'im isa, the Gemara says, now let's analyze this for just a moment. So the Gemara says, so v'im isa da amra b'yosef rechanina chaser sh'adam karol shel midaito kare kan ki kare prat l'mezuman. So both say, so now listen to this. Here's the problem. Rabbi Yosef rechanina, going back. If we say that chaser shel adam kornala shel midaito, that your chaser acquires for you even without your knowledge, so they both say, what should be the halacha? If these birds are living on my property, then what should be the halacha? What should be the halacha? They're mine. If they're mine, there should be no obligation of shiluach hakan, of sending away the mother bird. Yet the Brisa says there is an obligation to send away the mother bird, which indicates that they're not mine, which would then indicate that what? That my chaser is not acquiring them on my behalf. To what's going on over here? Amar Rava, Rava says, Beitza bi'etzias rubahu di'ichayvala b'shiluach u'mikne lo kanya adinafa lechatzero. Rava says, this is interesting. The egg itself generates the obligation to send away the mother bird when the majority of the egg exits. On the other hand, the chatzar itself does not acquire until the egg hits the ground or comes to rest on the ground. So let's say, you hear what's happening over here? The obligations almost like are created at two different times. The obligation to send away the mother bird before taking the egg is generated as soon as the majority of the egg exits the mother, right? And yet the chatzar only acquires the egg until the full egg hits the ground of the chatzar. So therefore, because the obligation for shiluach is generated before my chatzar acquires it, that's why again I have to send away the mother bird. And therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, when it says that you're chayv in shiluach, that's before the egg hits the chatzar. If that's the case, then we'll say, then why are they chayv because of gezel? To which the Gemara says, Iman, that's referring to the mother bird. The other possibility is the Olam Abeitzim, it's referring to the eggs. Umidinafik Ruba Daiti Iluya. And the moment that the majority of the egg leaves, leaves the mother, the owner's mind is on it already. V'hashla the Amrav Yehuda Amarav, Asla Zakos Bebeitzim Kozman Shem Rav Betzalehim. So I say, now that Rav said that you're not allowed to acquire the eggs as long as the mother is sitting upon them. Shenemar Shalech Tishalech Esaim Bahadra Esabanim Tikach Lach Afilu Tema Dinafla Lechatzero. So you can even set it up as a case where the egg did fall into the chatzar. Kolhecha Diihu Matzi Zachile Chatzero Zachile. Any time that I could acquire it myself, my chatzar acquires it as well. Kolhecha Diihu Lo Matzi Zachile. Whenever I could not acquire it, ultimately Chatzero Nami Lo Zachile. Asuros begezo medarke shalom. So we'll say, I don't understand that last phrase. Right? The Gemara says these eggs you can't take them because of darke shalom. And we'll say darke shalom means there's really no problem of theft, but you shouldn't do it because it's going to stir neighborly relations. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. Eid the shalcha, if halach I've sent away the mother bird, which means now the eggs are mine, gezel ma'al yehu, then that's real theft. Then if somebody takes those eggs, those are my eggs. Once I send away the mother bird and take the eggs, those eggs are mine. If someone takes them, that is real gezel. Idalo shalcha, and if I did not send away the mother bird, then ha bai shilucha. Then again, I have to send away the mother bird before doing anything. To which the Gemara says, ultimately again, we're talking about a katan, the lav bar shiluachu. We're talking about a katan, a child who took the eggs and didn't send away the mother bird. Because the child, and I'll say again, a child, a katan is not chayiv in mitzvahs, and therefore a katan is not chayiv in shiluach hakan. To which the Gemara says, katan, bar darchei shalamu. I don't understand. So I'll say, the same way that a katan is not obligated ultimately again, shiluach hakan, a katan is also not obligated in what? Darkei shalom. Right? And these halachas of darkei shalom, to which the Gemara says, hachi kamar aviv shal katan chayiv lahachzir lo mipnei darkei shalom. Now I'll say what it means is, if my kid stole someone's eggs, even though again, technically speaking, it wasn't an act of theft because it's a kid, the father is obligated to return the object, ultimately again because of darkei shalom, because in order to go ahead and make peace. Okay, so Bava says, therefore again, full circle, we have a number of things that come out of this sugya, but most importantly the takeaways are as follows. Number one, when you rent property to someone, according to the Mishnah, anything that is ma'aseh uman, anything that's like requires a specialized skill set, that obligation devolves upon the landlord. Anything that does not require a specialized skill set, ultimately responsibility of the renter. When you rent a chatzir, doesn't automatically include the barn. Also, chatzir shel adam kona l'shalom daito, a person's chatzir acquires on his behalf even without his knowledge, but that only applies to a chatzir mishtameres, to a guarded chatzir. What about avir? So airspace of a chatzir also acquires, but it seems to be that's only in a case where there's nothing that interrupts between the avir and the ground. If there's something that interrupts between the avir and the ground, ultimately again the avir will not acquire. What about avir, going through avir where it's ein sof l'nuach, it's never going to come to rest? That's a machlokes. Ultimately again, even so, therefore any manure in the field in the chatzar belongs to the landlord, but any type of ash or soot in the ovens, even though the appliance belongs to the landlord, Chazal gave to the renter. Incredible. I will say another interesting case over here. Mishnah. Hamaskir bais lechaver l'shana. Watch this. I rent a house to Ruvain for a year. It's a years-long rental. Nisabra hashana. So I'll say now, it becomes a leap year. And I will say now, understand, the Mishnah is dealing with a reality where we didn't know ahead of time it was a leap year, right? Remember, again, I will say, we now have a set calendar, so we know when leap years are coming. The case over here is, I rented Ruvain home for a year, and as far as we both knew, it was a regular year. Now it turns out that it's a leap year. There's an extra. They always say, if you think of it, there is nothing more exciting than a leap year. Right? Nothing more exciting. Well, I will say the concept that you get an extra month, I will say, is like the most incredible thing in the world. Right? The thing we always want more of all the time is more time. If only I had more time. If only I had another hour in the day. If only I had, right? So the concept of a leap year, I always felt like there's a certain energy, there's a certain excitement that comes with a leap year, knowing that you've been gifted an additional month. So here in this case, the shaila is, what's the status of the extra month in terms of the rental agreement? So I rented Ruben the house for a year. Now it turns out that there's a 13th month. So what do we do with it regarding the rental? So the Gemara says, so if I rented Ruben the home for the year, nisabra shana, nisabra l'socher, ultimately again, the renter gets the year. Gets the month. That month is his. Nisabra l'socher. Sorry. Yeah, it's a socher to the renter. Rashi says, "Nisabra l'socher lo yarber lo schar chodesh sha'ibor b'chlal shana." So we'll say, just understand what happened over here. Let's just play this out. So I rented Ruvain my house, or a house of mine, right, for the year. The rental for the year was $12,000, right? $12,000. That was the rental. Now it turns out that there's a leap year. Ruvain gets the extra month at no additional cost. The logic. What's the logic? We contracted for a year. It turns out, none of us knew, but it turns out that this year happens to be a 13-month year. That 13th month is included in the year. Ruvain benefits, he gets essentially an extra month for free, and I can't charge him anymore. Okay, next. Hiskelo l'chadoshim. So we'll say, what happens if I have a monthly rental? So I go ahead and I rent Ruvain my house, and it's $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month. Now, both say, now our intention, by the way, is to continue this through the year. Right? But the nature of the rental is that it's a monthly agreement, and then Nisabra Hashana, and now it became a leap year. What's the halacha? Nisabra Lamaskir. In that case, of course, the benefit of the additional month goes to the landlord. Since this is a monthly rental, it makes sense, monthly rental, therefore there's another month that goes to the landlord. So listen to this. There was an episode in Sipori, a real life story that happened to a guy who rented a bathhouse from his friend, right? So Ruvain rented a bathhouse from Shimon. Now, we'll say, listen to how the rental was structured. B'shnei masar zav l'shana, medinar zav l'chodesh. The way the rental agreement was structured was, it was 12 gold pieces, right? 12 gold pieces for the year, 1 gold piece per month. So the way they structured the rental agreement, we'll say, was a yearly amount, also broken down into the monthly obligation. So now what happened? Amud Beis. So now you know what happened. What happened in this case? They declared a leap year. So the shaila is, what do we do with this? What do we do with this? And this case came from Rabbi Shmuel Silber. And they said, Reuven and Shimon, landlord and renter, split the extra month. Split the extra month. So Gemara says, all right, Maisa Listar, I will say this, that story makes no sense, right? Because I will say the Mishnah gave 2 models. What are the 2 models? One is a yearly rental, and one is a monthly rental. If there is a leap year, if it's a yearly rental, so who gets the benefit of that? Who gets the benefit? The renter, right? We had a yearly agreement. So it happens to be this year, a year is 13 months. Again, so I get that extra month for free. And if it's a monthly rental, then ultimately, again, the benefit goes to the landlord. So I'll say, then the Gemara quotes this story, and the Gemara says, oh, with the extra month, you split it. But that was never that never came up in the Mishnah about splitting anything. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, you're right. There's something missing, and here's how you have to explain the case in the Mishnah. Here we go. So remember again, the Mishnah first introduced us to 2 models. Model 1 was a yearly rental. Model 2 was a monthly rental. The Mishnah says, by the way, there's a third model. What happens? I must say, model 3 is what? Model 3 is a yearly rental with monthly increments. Ruvain rented Shimon the bathhouse for 12 gold dinar a year, which represents 1 dinar a month. And this was what was broken out in the agreement. Shabbos says, now what's the shaila? What's the shaila? What do you do with that? Is that called a yearly agreement, or is that called a monthly agreement? To which the Gemara says, therefore, in that case, because we're not sure about, again, is that a yearly agreement or monthly agreement? So what do we do with the 13th month? Yachloku, split it. To which the Gemara says, "Yachloku umay sinai b'tzipori." So the story in Tzipori, ba'achas shesachar merchatz mechavero. B'Yisrael say. So now the Mishnah quoted the story. There was a story like this in Tzipori where Ruvain rented a bathhouse to Shimon. Shimon rented a bathhouse from Ruvain. So B'shnei masar zuhuvim l'shana, and the cost of the bathhouse was 12 gold pieces for the year. Medinar zahav l'chodesh, and 1 dinar a month. Uba myself then Rabbi Shmuel Silber, and then Rabbi said, then they declared a leap year. So they brought the shaila of the 13th month from Rabbi Shmuel Silber, but the Rabbi Yossi v'amar yachloku es chodesh ha'ibar, and ultimately again they paskin, okay, split the 13th month. So we'll say, so essentially, we'll pause here just a second. Essentially, what the Gemara is telling me is there are 3 models of the Mishnah, right? There's a yearly rental, and if there's a yearly rental and it turns out that it becomes a leap year, the benefit goes to the renter. If it's a monthly rental, and now again, there's a leap year declared, the benefit goes, or the extra month goes to the landlord. And if there was a rental, and the way the rental was structured was, here is the sum for the year, and then broken down into monthly increments or monthly payments, then again, essentially we're not sure, is that a yearly agreement or a monthly agreement, and therefore what do you do with the 13th month? Yachloku, split it. Okay, beautiful. To which the Gemara says, I don't understand. Amar Rav, so Rav says, I havi hasam, if I was there, right? If I was there, Havi ahivna le kule lamaskir. So this is very interesting. Rav said, if I was there, I actually would have awarded the entire 13th month to the landlord. So the landlord. So Gemara says, Rabbi say, now why is that? So Rav was saying is, I don't understand. You guys, Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Rabbi Yossi, you're saying yachloku. Rav says, if I was there, right? If I was there, I would have said no. There's no yachloku. Rather, again, the entire amount goes to the landlord. I will say, now what is Rav saying? My kamash malon, tafas lashon achron. So Rav is saying, very simple. We've actually had this sugi before. Whenever a person makes two statements, and the statements are somewhat contradictory, so what do you do? Shabbos says, "Machlokes tafas lashon rishna, tafas lashon achron." Do you ascribe authority to the first statement or the second statement? So Rav seems to be saying, tafas lashon achron. When a person makes two statements and they don't jive with each other, right? They don't really shtim. So we go ahead and we accept or we adapt the second expression over the first. So is that what Rav is saying? So therefore, again, Rav is saying essentially, if I was there, I would have said like this. Ruvain, you rented the bathhouse to Shimon, and you articulated a yearly amount and then a monthly amount. So clearly, what we're going to do is we're going to seize your second expression. Therefore, this is a monthly rental. Because it's a monthly rental, when there is now a leap year, who gets the benefit of the 13th month? Ruvain, the landlord. That's it. So the Gemara says, so what is Rav teaching us? Tafas lashon achron. So we'll say, okay, ha'amar Rav chadazina, but Rav already said this. The amar Rav huna, amar Rav. The Amrav Huna Amri Beirav Astira Mea Moi. So Mea Moi. Astira Mea Moi. Astira. So we'll say, so the key, so if you look at Rashi says, there is the last wide line in Rashi says, Astira Mea Moi, Im Echad Omer Lechavera, Bekama Chafetz Zeh, or Chifetz Zeh. Amr lo Astira Ela Mea Moi, Vinistratzu Mea Moi, Vinistratzech, Mea Moi Chayev lo. So we'll say, if I go over to Ruben and say, Ruben, how much is this object? And Ruben quotes me two prices. Now I'm going to say, now obviously this works where the two amounts that he's quoting to me are somewhat in the same ballpark. So again, I will say an astira is 96 zuz, and a ma'a is 100 zuz. Me'a ma'i is 100 zuz. So I will say, so again, 9600. So what do I do in this case? So which one is it? So Rav says it's always the last price articulated. So is the last price articulated. So again, astira mea moi, so mea moi. Mea moi astira. So Rav already told us, tafas lashon achron. Rav already articulated to us that whenever you have two statements, we always seize on the second one. So why does Rav have to say it over here? Ime hasam, because well, say if it was from over there, hava mina perushe kamefarish. I would have thought ultimately, again, maybe he's just explaining what it was that he was articulating originally. In other words, I will say, so maybe because Astira and Mea Moi are so close, they're so close in value, maybe it's not two different Lashonos, rather maybe one Lashon is explaining a different Lashon. Therefore, again, Kamashalam, that's not the case. Okay, so I will say, so therefore again, so here's what's happening over here. So now we see that we have a Machlokes, right? So what's our Machlokes? Our Machlokes is in this third case in the Mishnah, where again, Reuven is renting Shimon his bathhouse. And what do they do? So Reuven articulates the rental both in the form of a yearly sum and then in the form of a monthly sum. Then it turns out that there's a leap year. So I'm going to say, what's the status of the leap year? So on one hand, you have Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yossi is saying, Yachloku, split it. Rav says, if I was there, I'd say, you don't split that. Rather, again, it belongs to the landlord. Why? Tafas lashon achron, because we go after the second expression. The second expression was a monthly payment. Therefore, this is a monthly rental, and therefore the 13th month goes to the landlord. Now, listen. Now watch this. Now another opinion. Shmuel says no. What's the case here? Beba be'emtza chodesh askinan. This is interesting. Let's say this is talking about a case over here where Reuven and Shimon, right? Again, Reuven's the landlord, Shimon is the renter. They're coming to Beis Din in the middle of the 13th month. So I will say, so this machlokes is coming up in the middle of the month itself. Now look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi said, there's Shmuel, I will say, so just so you understand what's happening over here, Shmuel is interpreting the yachloku. Right, so the Yachloku statement, which is that in the 13th month, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yossi Paskin, they should split the 13th month. Shmuel's coming along and saying, that when is Yachloku? That's when they're showing up in Beis Din in the middle of the leap month, right? In the middle of the 13th month. Look at Rashi. Shmuel Amar Maslisin Tani Yachloku Bebala Bezin Be'emtza HaChodesh. Rashi says Va'amar Lo Tsemi Beisi Otimli Schar Chodesh Zeh. So what's happening over here? So Reuven is saying, Shimon, either vacate the premises or give me the money. V'zeh, as the Gemara says, and Shimon's saying, what are you talking about? The 13th month belongs to me. V'chimisaf kelon eiz alashon nispis is amri hamin mamanach cheskaso u'mashadarba kvar lo mafkinon minei v'dim alashon achron. I'm supposed to say, now watch this. Let me read in the Gemara. So Shmuel says like this. This whole machlokis of yachloku, right, or this whole concept of yachloku is only when they're appearing in Beis Din in the middle of the month. Because Rabbi say, since Shimon has lived there part of the month already, so on one hand maybe we say, Hamid Mamanach Haskaso, right? Shimon is the Mochsak, right? He's living there already. On the other hand, maybe we say Tafas Lashon Achron. So that's when we do that. However, again, the Gemara says, Aval Ba B'Tchilas Chodesh. Now let's say, but let's say Halacha L'Maisa. Now let's say, so just to understand, normally rent was paid at the end of the month. Right? That's the Talmudic model. In other words, you live there for the month, rent was paid at the end of the month. Aval Ba B'Sof Chodesh Kule L'Socher. I will say Ba B'Tchilas Chodesh Kule L'Maskir. If Halacha L'Maisa, this claim was happening at the beginning of the month, that ultimately, again, then Halacha L'Maisa, we assume that the owner, the landlord, is in the right. Now, what's the logic of that? I will say, because Hamid Karka Becheskas Bailao. Because I will say, there's Chazaka, right? What's the Chazaka? The Chazaka is, no, it's not Chazaka. Everyone agrees, Reuven is the owner of this, right? Shimon is the renter. So if the Machlokes comes about at the beginning of the month, then ultimately again the chazaka resides with Reuven the owner, and therefore again the law is on his side. So the Gemara says, I'm sorry. Similarly again, if they come in Beis Din, I will say when? At the end of the month, so who's right? At the end of the month, then the law sides with the renter. So this is actually very interesting over here. So Shmuel is coming to espouse a different model. Shmuel says like this. When the Mishnah says yachloku, so again, I'll say, let me just frame this whole thing, because we're going to stop over here for today. But let me just, we'll go do another 2 lines. Let me just frame the whole thing. So remember, we're focusing on case number 3 in the Mishnah. What's case 3 in the Mishnah? Case 3 in the Mishnah is Reuven rents Shimon a bathhouse. Now the problem is, how does he rent it? He says, Shimon, here's the bathhouse, I'm renting it to you, 12 gold dinar for the year, 1 dinar a month. 1 dinar a month. So Rabbi says, so now it becomes a leap year. This case happened. They came before Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yossi, and how did they pass in the Mishnah? Yachloku, split it. So Rabbi says, so in general, we're trying to figure out what does Yachloku mean, right? Why Yachloku? What's happening with the Yachloku? So I will say, so the Gemara, fine. So the Gemara, Rav came along and said, no. If I was there, I wouldn't say yachloku. Rather, if I was there, I would say what? Tafas lashon achron. This is a monthly rental. Shmuel's coming along and saying no. Why are they saying yachloku? Because they will say, when are Reuven and Shimon coming to Beis Din? When are they coming to Beis Din? In the middle of the month. The problem in the middle of the month is we're a little bit stuck. Had they come at the beginning of the month, see, I will say, because remember, everyone's acknowledging there is an ambiguity in this case, or ambiguity is the wrong word. There's confusion in this case. Why is there confusion? Is this a yearly rental, or is this a monthly rental? Because both Lashonos were used. So if they came to Beis Din at the beginning of the month, what would we say? We would say, Shimon, renter, vacate the premises. Because at the end of the day, Reuven is the owner. He has the chazaka. So because again, Hamid Mamon al Cheskaso, Hamotzi Mechavera Alav Haraya, therefore again, the halacha sides with Reuven, the owner. If they came at the end of the month, we would say, listen, Shimon already lived there. Now again, Reuven, you want to extract money. So Hamotzi Mechavera Alav Haraya on you. So if they came in the beginning of the month, we would have told Shimon, vacate the premises. They come at the end of the month, we would have said, Reuven, owner, I'm sorry, Shimon already lived there, that's it, we're done. The machlokes case is where they're coming in the middle of the month, and that's why, again, what's the halacha? That's where we're going to say achloka. So stop over for today. We'll pick up at Miras Hashem with this piece of Shmuel, the sheet of Shmuel Miras Hashem tomorrow, and we'll say, shkoyach. Oh, what a beginning of the week, incredible. All right, Chevra Zoom, have a great day, everyone.
So we know.